My name is Catherine Corbett, and I was 31 years old on the day my parents hijacked my birthday. They turned it into a high-stakes, star-studded investor gala at Cipriani Wall Street, packed to the brim with private equity bigwigs and high society New York families. Right as the main course was being served, my father took the microphone and staged a public execution. A waiter approached our table and placed a heavy, cream-colored envelope right in front of me. Inside was a notarized notice of disinheritance and family severance. It bore my father Preston's signature, my mother Carolyn's signature, and my younger sister Gabrielle's signature, all officially witnessed by the family attorney. Carolyn didn't bother lowering her voice. Her words cut through the room like a razor. You made your choices, Catherine. Now, we've made ours. Gabrielle was holding her phone up, pointing the camera straight at my face, recording every second of my humiliation like it was content for her social media feeds. I didn't beg, I didn't argue. I picked up the paper, folded it in half, and stood up to walk away. Even in that moment, they completely ignored the man sitting right beside me. My husband, who had been sitting quietly in a simple navy suit. They had no idea who he really was. And they certainly didn't know how fast he could completely flatten the empire they thought was untouchable. The Corbett family didn't just have money. They had Wall Street legitimacy and status. Corbett Capital Partners was a boutique private equity firm located in the financial district, managing an $890 million portfolio with 28 elite employees and a client roster that read like a Forbes index. Top 20 private equity firm in New York. My father Preston loved to remind everyone at dinner parties, as if being number 19 or 20 made a world of difference. Their office took up the entire 42nd floor of a glass tower just 3 blocks from Wall Street, featuring panoramic views of the New York harbor, custom mahogany tables in the boardrooms, and original artwork on the walls worth more than most people's homes. My mother Carolyn ran daily operations as the managing partner. She was an ice queen in Chanel suits, the kind of woman who could turn a simple handshake into an unspoken threat. They lived in an $8 million, 3,200-square-foot penthouse on 72nd and Park Avenue, overlooking Central Park through the changing seasons. On top of that, they owned a $4.5 million summer estate in the Hamptons, with private beach access and 10 guest rooms, built specifically to entertain people who measured their worth in helicopter minutes from Manhattan. Catherine, we don't invest in emotions. My mother told me 7 years ago, when I was 24, during what she called a professional intervention. We only invest in returns, and you chose books over billions. She thought I was just going through a phase, but the phase never ended. Following the non-negotiable family pipeline, I was supposed to study finance at Cornell. I enrolled in 2012 with a 3.8 GPA, fully intending to make them proud. For 3 whole years, I sat in lecture halls learning about financial derivatives, efficient markets, and leveraged buyouts, taking notes in a leather journal my mother had given me for Christmas. Then came October 2016, my senior year. I walked into the campus library, just planning to do a quick study session before an exam. Instead, I ended up watching a library science graduate student help an elderly woman navigate the online catalog. He was so patient and kind, explaining the Dewey Decimal System as if it were the most important thing in the world. Something shifted inside me that day. 2 weeks later, I changed my major. Less than an hour after the registrar processed my paperwork, an email from my mother hit my inbox. Subject line: Your future Catherine. Your father and I are deeply disappointed. A librarian with your lineage? Unacceptable. We will not be paying for this mistake. Mother. Not love mom. Not mom. Just mother. Formal and ice cold. Senior year tuition at Cornell was $58,000. I took out $80,000 in student loans to finish my degree. They didn't show up to my graduation. At 9:47 a.m. on the morning of the ceremony, my mother sent a text. Let us know when you're ready to take life seriously. I didn't text back. That was the first time I learned that silence was the best way to survive. My sister Gabrielle earned her MBA from Wharton 3 years ago. Before she even walked across the stage, she already had a job offer from Corbett Capital waiting for her. A $180,000 starting salary in a junior analyst position created specifically for her. On her first day, the family gifted her a $95,000 Porsche Cayenne with a massive red bow wrapped over the hood. She had 45,000 followers on Instagram and treated being a lifestyle influencer like a second job. She posted pictures of champagne brunches and business casual outfits, tagged with Boss Babe and Family Business. Her monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Chelsea was $4,800, fully covered by the family trust. The very same trust I had been quietly removed from shortly after the Cornell incident. Last year, during a family dinner at Le Bernardin, Gabrielle swirled her third glass of Bordeaux, looked across the table, and hit me with her signature smile. Sweet on the surface, dipped in poison underneath. Katie, bless your heart, still stamping books for minimum wage. When are you going to get a real job? My actual salary was $55,000, which wasn't minimum wage, but facts never mattered to Gabrielle when she saw a good chance to throw an insult. I didn't correct her. I just cut my salmon into tiny pieces and changed the subject. Later that night, her Instagram story updated with a boomerang video of the Corbett Capital lobby. The marble floors were gleaming. The caption read, "Family business, your regular 9 to 5. Location tag, where legends are made." 127 likes, 8 comments saying things like "Queen killing it" and "Teach me your ways." I saw it, closed the app, and went to sleep early. What else was I supposed to do? On May 18th, for my father's 61st birthday, we were in a private dining room at Le Bernardin for an $850 per person tasting menu. 12 seats were arranged around an oval table draped in white linen. I was assigned to seat 11, right near the service door, close enough to hear the kitchen noise and far enough away that the main conversation flowed right around me. At 8:30 p.m., my mother stood up with her champagne glass to announce that Corbett Capital had just closed a $240 million deal. Everyone clapped, toasted, and cheered. My father was beaming. Nobody mentioned that I had been promoted to senior librarian the week before. Nobody even asked. After 3 glasses of scotch, Preston leaned back, swirled his glass, and looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt. "You know what hurts the most, Katie," he slurred slightly, his voice heavy with expensive liquor and deep disappointment. "You had potential once. Once being the key word. Now you're just comfortable being mediocre." I set my fork down and nodded. "I'm happy with my choices." "And that," he said, swallowing the rest of his drink, "is the problem." At 9:15 p.m., I excused myself, saying I had an early shift at the library on Saturday morning. Technically, it was true. I opened at 10 a.m., but really, I just needed to leave before something inside me broke completely. On my way to the subway, I caught my mother's voice floating out from the half-open coat check area. She was talking to Gabrielle, completely unaware I was still in earshot. "We need to finalize the changes to the trust. Take her name off completely. She's not one of us anymore." I froze right there on the sidewalk of 32nd Street as a spring drizzle started to fall. Yellow taxis spraying rainwater as they sped past. Carolyn's words kept ringing in my head. Not one of us anymore. I didn't turn back around. I didn't confront her. I just pulled my coat tight, walked down the subway stairs, and felt the water soak through my cheap flats. That was the moment I realized cutting me off was bound to happen eventually. I just had no idea they would choose to do it so publicly. On Tuesday morning at 8:45 a.m., I unlocked the staff door at the Flushing branch of the Queens Public Library. The concrete building at 4117 Main Street had been built in 1964 and was desperate for a renovation. It was 12,000 square feet, holding 85,000 books and servicing 8,500 active cardholders. Most of our visitors were immigrants, Chinese families from Flushing, Korean grandmothers practicing their English pronunciation, Latino students working on homework using outdated computers that ran on hope and prayers to the IT department, and South Asian parents looking for citizenship study guides. My desk was on the second floor, with a window overlooking Main Street. Porch. There was only one personal photo on it. Theo and me smiling on our wedding day 3 years ago at City Hall. There were only 12 guests in total. Gabrielle hadn't shown up. At 10:30 a.m., Mrs. Chen walked over to my desk. She was a 65-year-old Chinese immigrant who had been attending my ESL classes for 14 months. Porch. She was holding a worn-out copy of Charlotte's Web, its pages soft from being flipped through so many times. "Miss Catherine," she said with a heavy accent, pronouncing every word carefully, "I finished it. Whole book, in English. First time in my life." She pressed the book into my hands like a sacred gift. "You changed my life." Porch. I felt something open up in my chest. The good kind of breaking that lets the light in. "You did the hard work, Mrs. Chen. I just showed you where the door was." She smiled with tears in her eyes and turned around to return the book. My manager, Denise, came by around noon. She was 58, had been a librarian for 32 years. Always wore cardigans with cat pins, and had endless patience. Porch. "Some big foundation rep is doing a tour of the branches today," she said, checking her notes. "Something about a massive grant. They might drop by our branch." I nodded and turned back to my computer to process book holds. I had no idea at the time that it was actually Theo's team doing field research for a $50 million grant, or that they had already decided where that money was going. Porch. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m., I taught ESL classes in the basement classroom. It had 24 folding chairs, a whiteboard from 1998, and a flickering fluorescent light overhead. The library's budget had been cut 3 times in 5 years, so I paid for the whiteboard markers out of my own pocket. Porch. There were 18 students ranging from 22 to 70 years old. Maria from Honduras worked minimum wage cleaning houses while practicing her interview skills. Mr. Park from South Korea was learning to read so he could help his grandson with homework. A family from Syria who had just arrived in the U.S. was trying to learn the complicated subway set map and the alphabet at the same time. Porch. They brought food from home to share, samosas, empanadas, and handmade dumplings. During our 15-minute breaks, we shared meals, laughed at our mispronunciations, and celebrated every small win. Last week, Maria sent me an email. Subject line: "Thank you, Miss Catherine. I practiced the interview. You taught me well. I got the new job, $18 an hour. My daughter is so proud. You are an angel." Porch. Maria R. $18 an hour was the most money she had ever made. It meant her daughter could stay in school instead of taking a weekend job, all because Maria had learned to comfortably say, "I am reliable and detail-oriented." I printed that email out and kept it in a drawer at home next to 46 other notes from students telling me I had changed their lives. Porch. I never showed them to anyone, not even Theo. After class on Thursday night, as I was packing up my teaching materials, worksheets I designed myself and printed on the library's antique copier, I found a note left on the table. The handwriting was shaky from old age. "You taught me to read," now I read to my grandson. "You gave me a voice, Mr. Park." Porch. I folded the note carefully, placed it in my coat pocket, and felt its true weight all the way home. By 9:15 p.m., I was back at our apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It was a 4th-floor walk-up, built in 1952, 480 square feet for $200 a month, which took up a quarter of my monthly income after taxes. Porch. The radiator clunked and rattled all winter, the shower pressure was terrible, and our single window faced a brick wall. But it was mine. It was ours. It wasn't paid for by a trust fund or family connections. Every single month, we paid that rent on time with money we earned ourselves. Theo was already home, standing in our tiny 6-by-4-foot kitchen making pasta. Porch. When I walked in, he turned around with a warm, easy smile. How was your day? He wasn't just being polite. He really asked and he really cared. Mrs. Chen finished Charlotte's Web, she cried. That's wonderful, Katie. He meant it. I could hear it in his voice. A kind of warmth my family could never muster when talking about my work. Orch. We ate pasta at our IKEA table, talking about little everyday things, and I felt completely at ease, far more at home than I ever did in that Park Avenue penthouse. After dinner, Theo went to take a shower, leaving his laptop open on the coffee table. He had been working right up until I got home, and the screensaver had timed out, leaving a preview of an email visible on the screen. Orch. $50 M Queen's Library Initiative. Board approval confirmed. Announcement set for Aug 24. From Aid Rivera at queensbp.gov. I stared at it for a long time. $50 million. Queen's Library. August 24th, my birthday. I had always assumed Theo did consulting work for a library foundation. Orch. He had mentioned it vaguely when we first met, calling it educational philanthropy. This had to be one of the projects he was working on. Maybe he helped write the grant proposal. I closed the laptop without reading any further. I trusted him and didn't want to pry. August 24th still felt far away. And I had no idea back then that it would be the night that changed everything. Orch. 4 years ago, on November 12, 2020, the New York Public Library hosted a fundraising event at the Stephen A. Schwartzman Building. I was attending on behalf of the Queens branch, encouraged by my supervisors to network, even though I hated forced small talk at donor events. At 7 p.m., wearing a $90 dress I bought at Macy's, I immediately felt underdressed the moment I walked in. Orch. Near the main reading room, there was a photography exhibit titled Public Libraries, a photographic essay. Black and white photos showed readers of all ages and backgrounds finding sanctuary in shared public spaces. Another guest and I both reached for an exhibit brochure at the exact same second, our hands touching the cover at the same time. "Oh, sorry," he said, pulling his hand back. Orch. He was wearing a navy blazer, jeans, and had deep brown eyes that looked genuinely sincere. A rare sight at an event like that. "It's fine, go ahead," I said, turning to walk away. "We can share," he offered, opening to the first page. "I'm Theo. I'm Catherine." We ended up talking for 2 hours, completely ignoring the main fundraiser. Orch. He told me he believed libraries were the beating heart of democracy, the one place where anyone, rich or poor, could access knowledge as equals. I remember thinking, finally, someone gets it. At 9:43 p.m., we exchanged numbers. The next morning, he texted asking me out for coffee. 6 months later, we were engaged. We got married at City Hall with just 12 friends, all from Theo's close circle. Orch. I didn't invite my family because I saw no reason to give them another opportunity to express their disappointment. What I didn't know at the time was that Theo had attended that fundraiser with Angela Rivera, who was the deputy Queens Borough president back then, and is now the borough president. She had seen him notice me in the crowd and watched the look on his face change. Orch. Go talk to her, Angela had whispered to him back then. She doesn't know who I am, Theo said. Keep it that way, Angela replied with a wink. That's your secret. They split up in the crowd after that. I never saw them arrive together and had no idea they knew each other. Some secrets are kept purely out of love. Theo worked from home. At least, that was my understanding. Orch. A laptop, some phone calls, and the occasional meeting in Manhattan. When people asked, he called it educational consulting. I assumed he made around $80,000 or $90,000 a year. Comfortable but hardly wealthy and perfect for our simple life. He drove a 2016 dark green Subaru Outback with 128,000 miles on the odometer. Orch. Last year, I gently suggested he consider getting a new car, just dropping it casually without any pressure. It runs great, he said. Money isn't everything. He bought Uniqlo hoodies, shopped at Trader Joe's, took the subway everywhere, and insisted on splitting our rent 50-50, even though I suspected he could probably afford more. But I appreciated it. Orch. I loved the equality, the partnership, and his refusal to ever make me feel like I was being taken care of. 6 months after we got married, I borrowed his laptop because mine had crashed during a system update. As I was checking my email, I noticed an open browser tab. Forbes 30 Under 30 Social Impact. Without thinking, I clicked on it. The page loaded to a professional headshot of Theo, wearing an expensive suit I had never seen before. The caption underneath read, Theo Ashford, founder of the Ashford Literacy Fund. 2.1 billion endowment. I stared at the screen, completely frozen. 2.1 billion. Then I heard the apartment door open as Theo came back from grocery shopping. I closed the tab immediately, my heart pounding in my chest. I never brought it up. Maybe it was just a coincidence and someone shared his name. The photo looked like him, but pictures can be deceiving. I pushed it to the back of my mind. We were happy, so why complicate things with questions? Looking back, I realize I simply didn't want to know. Knowing the truth meant facing why he kept it hidden and questioning whether our entire relationship was built on a secret. So I chose ignorance. I chose trust over digging deeper. In November 2022, 2 years ago, I brought Theo to the Park Avenue penthouse for a family dinner. I had been trying to delay it, but my mother's passive-aggressive emails had reached a point where I couldn't ignore them anymore. When do we get to meet this mysterious husband of yours? The penthouse dining room sat 14 people under a crystal chandelier, with an original Rothko painting on the wall and Central Park lit up in the winter night outside the windows. Theo wore khakis and a casual button-down shirt after I told him the dress code was business casual. To me, he looked perfect. But standing next to Preston in his custom Tom Ford suit, and Gabrielle in her Burberry dress, he looked completely ordinary. During the appetizer, my father asked the inevitable question. So, Theo, what line of work are you in? I work in educational philanthropy, Theo replied, his voice calm and steady. My mother cut in before he could elaborate. Oh, nonprofit. The way she said it made it sound like he was admitting to being unemployed. Yes, ma'am, he answered quietly. For the entire first course, Gabrielle never raised her head from her phone. She just kept scrolling through Instagram, occasionally showing my mother a photo and whispering things I couldn't hear. Theo left at 8:50 p.m., saying he had an early meeting the next morning. We didn't even stay for dessert. After he left, my mother took a sip of red wine and gave me a look. The kind of look that meant she was ready to deliver criticism disguised as concern. Catherine, darling, you could have done so much better. I know librarians don't meet high achievers, but really, he drives a Subaru. I love him. Love doesn't pay for nursing homes, dear. On the subway ride home alone, since Theo had taken a cab to prepare for his meeting, that dinner kept replaying in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about how quiet he had been, or how his jaw tightened when my mother spoke about nonprofits like they were a disease. I'm sorry for how they acted, I told him when I got home. Theo was sitting on the couch looking at his laptop. He raised his head with an unreadable expression. No need to apologize. They showed me exactly who they are. He paused. Katie, if they ever really hurt you, I mean deeply hurt you, tell me. Promise me. Those were just verbal jabs. I'm used to it. I promise. 3 months later, when the disinheritance letter arrived, I kept it from him until the night before the dinner. I broke that promise, and the price was carrying the heavy weight of that envelope completely alone for 3 whole weeks. On August 1st at 2:30 p.m., as I was processing returned books, Denise handed me an envelope that had arrived in the morning mail. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock, extremely expensive, with my work address written on the front in elegant calligraphy. Miss Catherine Corbett, Queens Public Library, 411 Main Street, Flushing, NY. Not Mrs. Ashford. No married name. It was completely intentional. I opened it in my office to find an embossed gold logo for Corbett Capital Partners. The invitation itself was printed on museum-grade paper, the kind people use when they rent private islands for weddings. Preston and Carolyn Corbett cordially invite you to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Corbett Capital Partners. August 24th at 7 p.m. Cipriani, Wall Street. Black tie required. Porch. Please RSVP by August 10th. Tucked in the corner was a handwritten note in my mother's sharp, angular handwriting that didn't waste a single drop of ink. Catherine, your birthday happens to fall on this day. How convenient. Do try to dress appropriately, and if you must, bring your husband. Mother, not mom, not love, just mother, as formal as a corporate memo. Porch. I read it 3 times, feeling my stomach turn cold. There were 24 days left until my birthday, until I officially turned 31, and they were treating it like an afterthought to a corporate event. How convenient, she had written, as if my birth were just an annoying detail that happened to align with their schedule. I showed the note to Theo that night. Porch. He read the invitation and the note, keeping his face completely neutral. Do you want to go? It's my birthday, maybe they're trying to make peace. You know, extending an olive branch. He set the invitation down on our coffee table. They sent this to your workplace and referred to me as if you must. That's no olive branch. I know, I admitted. I really did know. Porch. But a part of me, the part that was still 7 years old and desperately craved my parents' approval, wanted to believe it anyway. If I don't go, they'll say I'm the one burning bridges, that I'm bitter and lack manners. Theo sighed and pulled me into an embrace. All right, we'll go. You really don't have to. I have to. If you're walking into that room, I'm walking in with you. Porch. You won't even wear a tuxedo. He smiled softly. Deal, navy suit, final offer. I smiled back, feeling a little better. At least I wouldn't be facing them alone. On August 15th at 10:07 a.m., while drinking coffee in the staff break room, my phone buzzed with an event email from Corbett.com. It didn't come from my mother's personal address. It was sent by the event coordinator. Porch. Subject. Seating arrangement, Aug 24 event. Miss Corbett, you are assigned to table 18 with 1 guest dress code. Strict black tie, no exceptions. That was all it said. No looking forward to seeing you, no happy early birthday. Just cold logistics. I opened the attached PDF seating chart, which was color-coded by category. Porch. Tables 1 through 8 were VIPs, investors, and family members, marked with red dots. Tables 9 through 17 were business partners and associates, marked with blue dots. Table 18 was designated for miscellaneous guests and staff overflow, marked with a gray dot. I zoomed in on table 18, located in the far corner as far from the stage as possible. Porch. The attendees listed were Catherine Corbett, +1 and 6 others TBD. That meant they hadn't even decided who else was sitting with us yet. I was just filler, a last-minute addition to take up space for people who couldn't make the curated VIP list. I scrolled through the full attendee list of 155 names and spotted the Queensborough president, Angela Rivera, at table 3. Porch. The CEO of Penguin Random House, Jeffrey Hunt, was at table 5. There were multiple Fortune 500 CEOs, senators, and New York socialites whose names regularly appeared in the Times social section. Meanwhile, I was banished to table 18, categorized as miscellaneous. Denise walked into the break room and caught the look on my face. Are you all right? I locked my phone. I'm fine, just family stuff. Porch. She squeezed my shoulder gently, without pushing for details, which I was grateful for. On August 17th, the text messages started flooding in. Gabrielle, can't wait for the party. It was her first message to me in 3 months, and I stared at the screen feeling instantly on guard. Gabrielle, what are you planning to wear? Please tell me it's not that brown dress from Easter. I didn't reply. Porch. Gabrielle, Mom asked me to remind you the dress code is formal, not librarian chic, lol. Still no reply. On August 18th at 11:32 p.m., another text arrived from Gabrielle. By the way, Mom said she hopes you won't give any speeches at dinner. Last time you talked about your poor students, people actually got up to get drinks out of awkwardness. Porch. Between August 17th and 23rd, 8 texts came through in total. Every single one was a tiny cut designed to make me feel small, unwelcome, and out of place. I didn't respond to a single one. I just watched them come in, felt my stomach knot up, and deleted the notifications. Theo noticed on August 20th. She's texting you again. Yeah. Ignoring it. What is she saying? Arch. The usual. I placed my phone face down on the table. Just Gabrielle being herself. On August 23rd at 9:15 p.m., the final text came in. Gabrielle, see you tomorrow, big sis. It's going to be so exciting. I should have known right then what was coming. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling of our tiny bedroom, listening to Theo's steady breathing beside me. Arch. At 2:30 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water. Theo's phone was charging on the kitchen counter, and the screen lit up with a notification preview, Angela Rivera. Theo, confirming your attendance tomorrow. Need final head counts to make the announcement. This is going to be an incredible moment. Announcement? What announcement? I stared at the message. It had to be about the library grant. Arch. Theo was consulting on that major project, the $50 million grant I had seen in his email earlier. My birthday was tomorrow. The gala was tomorrow. And an incredible announcement was about to be made. I set the phone back down without snooping any further, walked back to bed, and tried to sleep, though it was impossible. I lay there as an eerie, heavy dread settled in my chest like wet concrete. Arch. At 10:30 p.m. on August 23rd, our Brooklyn apartment felt tighter than usual, as if the walls were closing in on me while I laid out my clothes for the next night. I had chosen a simple, knee-length black dress bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack for $180 after saving up for 2 months to buy it. I told myself it was an investment for future job interviews or library fundraisers. Arch. Theo's navy suit was hanging on the closet door next to my dress. It was good quality, well-tailored but understated. We stood there looking at our outfits side by side, our armor for the coming evening. We don't have to go, Theo said from the bed. It was the third time he had said it that day. No, we have to go. I sat down next to him. Theo, if I don't show up, it just proves their point. Arch. It proves I can't handle their world, that I'm too sensitive, too bitter. I need to show them I'm doing just fine and that their opinions can't crush me. He pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. You are the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. That's how I know you are. Strong people question themselves. Weak people are too arrogant to reflect. Arch. I took a deep breath, taking in his familiar scent of clean laundry and subtle cologne. It made me feel a little better. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. What you do matters way more than any deal they're closing tomorrow. I wanted to believe him. Even with all my doubts, I chose to believe him. Suddenly his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood up. Arch. I have to take this work call. He walked out onto our fire escape, what we jokingly called our balcony, even though it was just rusted metal facing a brick wall. Through the window, I caught snippets of his voice. His tone was sharp, formal, and professional. Yes. Confirming the announcement for tomorrow night, the 50 million one. Yes, I'll be there. He paused.
No, we handle this carefully.
Arch. She doesn't know yet. I'll tell her after. She doesn't know yet. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. Who didn't know? What was I kept in the dark about? But I had promised myself I wouldn't pry. I wouldn't question him. Trust was the bedrock of our marriage. If Theo was keeping something from me, he had to have a reason. 5 minutes later, he walked back inside and smiled. Arch. Sorry about that. Is everything okay? Yeah, just finalizing some project details, he said, kissing my forehead. Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. We got into bed, and he was asleep within minutes. I lay awake until 3 p.m., staring at the shadows on the ceiling and wondering what I still didn't know. August 24th, my 31st birthday. Arch. I woke up at 7:15 a.m. to find Theo already up, making coffee in our tiny kitchen and flipping pancakes on the stove. It was our birthday tradition. He sang happy birthday horribly off-key, making me laugh despite the knot tightening in my stomach. 31 looks good on you, he said, sliding a plate across our IKEA table. Arch. I tried to eat, forcing down half a pancake before a sudden wave of nausea hit. You all right? Just a little nervous. It's not too late to cancel. I already RSVP'd. At work, I was completely checked out. I went through the motions of checking in returned books and smiling at patrons without really seeing them. Mrs. Chen came by at noon, handing me a small gift box. Orch. Happy birthday, Miss Catherine. Inside was a handcrafted woven bookmark made of intricate blue and gold threads. It must have taken her hours. Mrs. Chen, you shouldn't have. You give me so much. I give back a little bit. I hugged her, feeling tears welling up, but I forced them back before they could fall. At 4 p.m., I left work early. Orch. Denise hugged me and wished me a wonderful birthday. I almost laughed out loud. Wonderful was the last word I'd used to describe this day. I got home at 5 p.m. and started getting ready at 5:30. The simple black dress, minimal jewelry, a pair of small earrings, no necklace. I didn't own expensive jewelry. My hair was down and my makeup was understated. Orch. Theo walked out of the bathroom at 6:15 p.m. wearing that navy suit. He looked great. That quiet, grounded, handsome quality was what drew me to him in the first place. Nothing flashy, just steady. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. We took the subway to Wall Street, stepping out into the humid summer air at 6:50 p.m. and walking 3 blocks to Cipriani. Orch. We passed people arriving in $1,000 couture suits and chauffeured limousines. While we arrived on foot, the sweat from the subway ride not even dry on our backs. As we approached the entrance, Theo reached for my hand and gave it a firm squeeze. I'm with you, he whispered. No matter what happens in there. I squeezed back tight, not trusting my voice. Orch. At 6:58 p.m., we walked through the doors and entered the Lion's Den. At 7 p.m., Cipriani Wall Street looked like a scene straight out of a movie about people who never had to worry about rent. Soaring vaulted ceilings, marble pillars, and massive chandeliers dripping in crystal. The space used to be a bank, which felt fitting, because the currency circulating here wasn't money. It was status. Orch. We bypassed the valet area, where the staff watched us with barely disguised disdain as we walked up from the subway. A woman in a Chanel gown stepped out of a Bentley right behind us, her high heels clicking against the marble floor like gunfire. Inside, the ballroom opened up into 15,000 square feet of old money luxury. Orch. The tables were arranged in a strict hierarchy, each one broadcasting the net worth of the people seated there. Right at the front near the stage were tables 1 through 8, adorned with white orchids, champagne, and crystal flutes reflecting light like liquid gold. I scanned the room and found table 18, tucked away in the farthest corner 40 feet from the stage. Orch. It was the only table in the venue decorated with carnations, grocery store carnations that were already wilting in the heat. There were water glasses on the table instead of champagne flutes. 8 seats, but only 2 place cards. Neither bore my name. An usher approached, holding a clipboard, wearing an earpiece and a practiced smile. Name? Catherine Corbett. Her eyes scanned the list. Orch. Table 18. In the corner. She pointed, without even looking, dismissing us. With routine coldness, we walked across the hall, passing table 1. My mother was presiding over things there in a silver gown that likely cost more than my annual salary. She saw me and smiled. The kind of smile a predator gives its prey right before moving in for the kill. Orch. Table 3. Angela Rivera, the Queensborough president, was in deep conversation with someone I didn't recognize. As we passed, she looked up. Her eyes rested on Theo for a second, widening slightly before she looked away. Strange. Table 5. Jeffrey Hunt, CEO of Penguin Random House. Orch. I could read his name tag from where I stood as he conversed animatedly with 2 other executives, gesturing with his hands. We reached table 18, where 6 people were already seated. Total strangers. Middle management assistants, I guessed. People invited out of obligation, but entirely unimportant to the hosts. They barely raised their heads when we sat down. Orch. The woman next to me, her name card read Jennifer Martin, analyst, forced a stiff smile. Corporate events, right? Always so awkward. Always, I agreed. Theo sat to my left, quietly observing. His jaw showed that same tight line from our first family dinner. I placed my hand on his knee under the table, and I felt him relax just a fraction. Orch. A waiter carrying champagne walked right past our table and headed straight for table 17. Jennifer noticed. I guess we're the water table. She laughed, though the laugh was hollow. I looked at the centerpiece. 6 supermarket-quality carnations, maybe 49 cents a stem at most. Every other table had orchids worth easily $200. The message was crystal clear. You're here, but you don't matter. Orch. By 7:15 p.m., the room was packed. The air hummed with a symphony of wealth and status. I watched my father work the room effortlessly, shaking hands and clapping shoulders. My mother stood beside him, a mix of elegance and frost. Gabrielle was near the stage with her camera, capturing content for Instagram. Not one of them looked over at table 18. Orch. At 7:25 p.m., my mother walked past our table, not toward us, just passing by to greet someone more important. She paused and looked down at me, as if only just noticing my presence. Catherine, not darling, not happy birthday, just my name. Hi, Mom. Her eyes scanned my dress, going down and then back up. The evaluation took barely 3 seconds, but it felt like hours. Orch. Then she turned to the woman next to her, a woman dripping in Harry Winston diamonds, and spoke just loud enough for me to hear. That's the librarian daughter I was telling you about. The pause before the word daughter was faint but deliberate, as if the word made her uncomfortable. The woman glanced at me, gave a polite smile, and turned away. My mother walked off without another word. Orch. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably beside me. Family? Unfortunately, yes. Theo's hand found mine under the table, holding it tight. At 7:30 p.m., Gabrielle showed up at our table, a Sony A7 IV camera slung around her neck like a trophy and a phone in her hand as backup. Orch. She was wearing a red dress that cost more than several months of my rent, flashing her signature influencer smile, all teeth, zero warmth. Katie, she said with fake enthusiasm, performing for the camera. Happy birthday, big sis. She raised her phone to record. Say hi to Instagram. She turned the lens toward Theo. And this is... Sorry, what was your name again? Orch. Theo, he said without expression. Right, Theo. She giggled to a friend hovering behind her. Another influencer vibe, dressed up with a bored expression. They took the subway here, can you believe it? Her friend laughed, a cruel, mean-spirited laugh. Gabrielle leaned in closer, still filming. So, how do you like the party? Pretty grand for a Tuesday night, huh? Orch. I know today is technically your birthday, but really, this is about the firm. 25 years of excellence. She flipped the camera back to herself. Legacy. Not that you'd know anything about that. She strolled away, her thumb flying across the screen as she edited the video. My face burned, and shame rose in my throat like acid. Breathe, Theo whispered softly. Orch. I did, inhaling through my nose and exhaling through my mouth, counting to 5. Table 17 next to us had witnessed the whole thing, and I saw the pity in their eyes. Pity was always worse than ridicule. At 7:35 p.m., waiters began serving the appetizers. Tables 1 through 17 received seared scallops, beautifully plated with microgreens and surgical precision. Orch. Table 18 got the house salad. Iceberg lettuce with a side plastic cup of ranch dressing. Jennifer picked at her salad. I've had better food at prison weddings. I almost laughed. If the situation hadn't been so perfectly crafted to humiliate me, I really would have. The man sitting across from me, David Sullivan, junior analyst, leaned forward. First Corbett event? First time being invited. Orch. Yeah, they're like this. Every detail broadcasts the caste system. Last year, table 19 didn't even have chairs. They had to stand. You're joking. I wish I were. Welcome to corporate feudalism. He jabbed his fork into a cherry tomato. I looked around, seeing how status was measured in every small detail. Orchids versus carnations. Champagne versus water. Orch. Seared scallops versus iceberg lettuce. Every choice delivered the same message. You are beneath us. At table 1, my mother raised her glass, and the room grew quiet. She said something I couldn't hear from 40 feet away, prompting ripples of laughter and applause. At table 18, we didn't clap. We couldn't hear anything worth celebrating. At 7:40 p.m., I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Torch. Everyone at our table had a name card printed on white cardstock with gold foil lettering. Jennifer Martin, David Sullivan, Robert Chen. Even the 2 empty seats had cards waiting for late arrivals. Everyone except me and Theo. The 2 spots where our names should have been were completely bare. Just empty space on the tablecloth, as if we were anonymous and entirely replaceable. Jennifer noticed me staring. No place cards? Apparently not. That's harsh, she said awkwardly. I'm sorry. Don't be, I'm used to it. Theo leaned close to my ear. We can leave, Katie, not yet. I didn't know why I was staying. Pride, maybe. Or stubbornness. Maybe it was the same part of me that changed majors despite my parents' threats, and married Theo despite their disapproval. I wasn't going to let them win by running away. But God knew how badly I wanted to escape. Our table was 15 feet from the swinging stainless steel kitchen doors, which pushed open and shut as waiters rushed through carrying trays. Every time the doors swung open, noise spilled out. Clattering dishes, shouted orders, the chaos of a high-volume commercial kitchen. At table 1, they heard classical music from the string quartet near the stage. At table 18, we heard, 6 scallops for table 9. Hurry up, the sauce is breaking. David met my gaze. Immersive dining experience. This time I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity was just too overwhelming. Theo didn't laugh. He simply observed the room with a cold, focused calm, as if filing away every single detail. At 7:50 p.m., Gabrielle returned, holding her phone up to record once more. She walked over to our table with deliberate slowness. Hey, Katie, quick question, she said, leaning over my chair and angling the camera down at my face. How does it feel to be here? You know, at a real business event. Must be pretty different from the library. I looked at her, really taking in the cruelty in her eyes and the performance of it all. At 26, she had learned to turn every ounce of her privilege into a weapon. It is different, I said quietly. I bet, she smirked. I mean, look at this place, Cipriani. Do you even know what the venue rental costs? No. $50,000 just for the space, she said, panning her camera across the hall. But I guess when you're celebrating excellence, you don't cut corners, right? She walked away, and I watched her instantly upload the video, her thumb flying across the screen to tag and post it. The tables around us had gone quiet, reluctant witnesses to my humiliation. I felt a numbness settle inside me, a protective barrier kicking in before the pain could get worse. Theo's hand remained anchored to mine through it all. At 7:45 p.m., my father stood up from table 1 and walked to the stage with the effortless confidence of a man who had never questioned his place in the world. He removed the microphone from its stand. Good evening, everyone. His voice boomed clearly through the speakers. Thank you all for coming tonight. Polite. Expectant applause filled the room. Before we get to the main program, I have a bit of family business to attend to, he said, smiling with fake warmth. As some of you know, tonight also happens to be my daughter Catherine's birthday. Heads turned as people looked around for me, and I felt 155 pairs of eyes land on table 18 in the corner. I froze. Catherine, would you please stand up? I didn't move. I couldn't. Every muscle had locked up. Theo's hand tightened around mine. You don't have to. But I knew I had to, because staying seated would give them the excuse they wanted. Look, she doesn't even have basic manners. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room locked onto me. There she is, my father said, his tone dripping with something I couldn't quite define. Part arrogance, part mockery. 31 today, my eldest daughter. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a heavy, cream-colored envelope. The exact same kind used for the invitation. Heavy cardstock, undeniably expensive. Catherine, I have something for you. My stomach sank completely. A waiter appeared at my side. He wants you to come up to the stage, miss. I looked at Theo. His face was set like stone. his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle flexing. "I'll walk up with you," he said. "No." I didn't know why I refused. I just didn't want him pulled into this mess or made a part of their spectacle. "George, stay here." I walked the 40 feet from table 18 to the stage in what felt like the longest walk of my life, passing table 17, table 16, and guests whispering while pulling out their phones. Table 9, table 8. Getting closer. My mother watched from table 1, her champagne glass suspended mid-air, beautiful, cold, and unyielding. George. At table 3, Angela Rivera looked confused and concerned, starting to stand before sitting back down. I stepped onto the stage, my heels clicking loudly against the wooden steps. My father handed me the envelope, smiling for the cameras. Gabrielle was recording, of course, and several other guests were holding up their phones too. "Happy birthday, Catherine." George. I took the envelope and felt its weight heavier than a birthday card, far too formal for a gift certificate. My hands trembled as I opened it to find 2 sheets of paper with official letterhead. Corbett Capital Partners Legal Division. My eyes scanned the opening paragraph. Notice of severance and removal from family trust. The words blurred, so I blinked and forced myself to refocus. George. Catherine Marie Corbett is hereby officially removed from all family financial instruments, trust funds, inheritance provisions, and corporate holdings, effective immediately. This action is taken due to fundamental differences in values and life choices incompatible with the Corbett family legacy signatures. Preston Corbett, Carolyn Corbett, Gabrielle Corbett. George. Witnessed and notarized by James Patterson, family attorney. Date: August 24, 2024. My birthday. I read it twice, then 3 times, but the words didn't change. The room was dead silent, waiting. My mother's voice cut through the stillness from table 1, clear, sharp, and theatrical. "Consider it a gift from all of us, dear." George. I looked up to see her standing, still holding her champagne glass, lifting it slightly in a mock toast. "You made your choices, Catherine. Now we've made ours." 155 people were watching as phones recorded the scene. Gabrielle was still filming from the side of the stage, zooming in on my face to capture the exact moment I broke. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. George. It wasn't pain or shock, but total clarity. I had spent 7 years trying to earn their approval, hoping they would see the value in my choices, and understand that teaching Mrs. Chen to read mattered just as much as closing a $200 million deal. This letter was the proof. I folded the document carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. George. "Thank you for making it official," I said, my voice steady, calm, and neutral. No explanations, no defense, no pleading. I simply turned around and walked off the stage. A dead silence hung over the entire hall, the kind of stunned quiet that follows an accident right before the screaming starts. I walked back toward table 18, keeping my pace steady and my breathing even. George. I wasn't going to break down or give them that satisfaction. As I approached, Theo stood up and met me between tables 12 and 13. He didn't ask a single question. He just put his arm around my shoulder and turned us toward the exit. Then a voice stopped us in our tracks. "Theo?" A woman's voice called out, filled with confusion. It came from table 3. "Theo Ashford?" George. We froze as Angela Rivera, the Queensborough president, stood up. Dressed in a professional suit, her eyes shifted rapidly from confusion to recognition, and then to absolute shock. Is that you?" She stepped away from her table and walked toward us. "Theo, I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you weren't attending officially until tomorrow for the..." George. She stopped, looking from me to Theo and back again as realization washed over her face. "My God, you're Catherine. Catherine Corbett." I stared at her. "Do we know each other? I know your husband." She looked at Theo, then toward my father standing frozen on the stage, then at my mother before bringing her gaze back to us. "Does your family have any idea, George, who you are?" "No," Theo said calmly, "they don't." The dead silence in the room instantly gave way to a surge of whispers as people turned to watch our interaction. Over at table 5, Jeffrey Hunt, the CEO of Penguin Random House, stood up and walked toward us with deliberate steps. Theo Ashford, he said, extending a hand. I thought that was you. George, didn't expect to see you at table 18? He gave a puzzled laugh. What are you doing in the corner? Theo shook his hand. Accompanying my wife to her event. Jeffrey's eyes shifted to me. Your wife? Wait, he looked toward my father on stage. Corbett, how are you related to the Corbetts? More people stood up, pulling out their phones. George. I heard someone at table 7 whisper, "Search Theo Ashford on Google right now!" I watched it unfold in real time as the news spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into voices, and voices turned into demands. Someone at table 9 said, "My God, that's the Ashford from the Ashford Literacy Fund." Table 6, $3 billion. Are you serious? Table 4, he's at table 18. George. Why on earth is he sitting at table 18? My mother's face went completely pale. My father finally moved from the stage, walking over with a dark, heavy expression. Carolyn followed right behind him, abandoning her champagne glass as her heels clicked sharply against the floor. What is going on here? Preston tried to keep his voice controlled, but I could hear the shake in it. George. Jeffrey turned to face him. You just publicly severed ties with the wife of one of the most influential philanthropists in the country. He spoke in a calm, matter-of-fact tone, letting the words carry their own weight. Preston stared at Theo, really looking at him for the first time, as if seeing him as a real person instead of an afterthought. You run a foundation? I founded it, yes. George. How much? Preston caught himself, the question sounding too vulgar even for him to say aloud. Someone answered for him anyway. A woman at table 9 called out, $3.1 billion. It's right there in Forbes. Carolyn made a sound, not quite a gasp, but more like the air being knocked completely out of her lungs. George. Gabrielle stood near the stage with her camera lowered and her phone in her other hand, scrolling frantically. Her expression cycled through disbelief, horror, and sheer panic. She had been filming me, documenting my humiliation for her 45,000 followers, and had already posted the previous video tagged with family drama and birthday disaster. George. Now she was desperately trying to delete it, her thumb flying across the screen. It was too late. The internet doesn't forget, and screenshots last forever. Her friend beside her, the one who had laughed earlier, showed Gabrielle her phone screen and said something I couldn't hear. Gabrielle turned ghost white. George. She looked over at me, really looking at me this time, her eyes filled with frantic calculation as she tried to figure out how to spin this, turn it into content, or salvage her image. But deep down, she knew she couldn't. Angela Rivera stepped forward, placing herself between my parents and us like a physical barrier. George. Preston, Carolyn, she said, her tone shifting instantly into official borough president mode. I'm not sure you realize what just happened. Obviously, there's been a misunderstanding. Carolyn began. There is no misunderstanding, Angela cut her off. You publicly humiliated your daughter in front of investors, politicians, and business leaders. George. You handed her a disinheritance letter as a birthday gift. She paused. And you did all of this without having any idea that her husband manages more philanthropic capital than most foundations in this country. Preston tried to regain control of the situation. We had no idea. And that's the problem. Angela's gaze was sharp. You never asked. You never cared. George. You judged everything based on appearances. She looked at Theo. He drives a Subaru and works in education, so you assumed he was broke, right? A heavy silence fell over the room. He sits on the board of the Library of Congress. He has funded literacy initiatives across 40 states. George. He has corporate partnerships with Amazon and Google for educational tech. Angela's voice echoed through the hall as everyone listened intently. And tomorrow. She stopped and looked at Theo. May I? Theo gave a subtle nod. George. Tomorrow, we were planning to announce the largest single private donation in the history of the Queen's Public Library System, a $50 million grant from the Ashford Literacy Fund, led by Theo Ashford. Angela paused, letting the figure sink in. and your daughter, Catherine, was to be named Director of Community Engagement. The room froze completely. Did she say $50 million? Someone whispered. Orch. Did she say she's being appointed director? Angela turned to me. Catherine, if you still want it, the position is yours. Nothing that happened tonight changes that. I couldn't speak. My brain couldn't fully process the information. $50 million, director. My library, my students, and all while my family was busy mocking me for stamping books for minimum wage. Orch. Jeffrey Hunt stepped forward holding his phone, showing an article saved on his screen to my parents. It was a feature from Time magazine last year, showing a photo of Theo at the White House for Time's 100 Most Influential People in Health and Education. Jeffrey read aloud. Theo Ashford, 36, has completely reshaped the model for funding public education in America. Orch. His Ashford Literacy Fund, backed by over $3 billion in endowments, partners with state governments, tech giants, and community organizations to bring digital literacy resources to underserved communities nationwide. He lowered his phone and looked at Preston. That's the man who was sitting at your table 18 tonight. That's the man you served tap water to while withholding champagne. Orch. More phones came out as articles and proof piled up. Forbes interviews, Harvard Kennedy School case studies on the Ashford model, and op-eds written by Theo himself for the New York Times on public education as the foundation of democracy. The sheer weight of it, all pressed down on the room. Not just the money, but the legacy, the influence, and the meaningful work that actually changed lives. Orch. Everything my family claimed to value most. Success, impact, and lasting worth. Theo possessed in abundance. He just saw no need to flaunt it. A woman stepped forward from table 3. She was in her 50s, carrying herself with effortless authority. Her name tag read, Patricia Morrison, philanthropic consultant. Orch. Theo, I had no idea you'd be here tonight, she said, shaking his hand warmly before turning to me. You must be Catherine. Theo talks about you constantly, about your work with ESL students and the literacy programs you've built. She turned to my mother. I've consulted for the Ashford Fund for 5 years. Orch. On every major project decision, Theo always asks, what would Catherine do? She is his moral compass and his inspiration. Patricia smiled at me. The way he talks about you is the way most people talk about their heroes. I felt a lump form in my throat. Theo had never told me any of this. Never mentioned how he spoke about me to others or how central I was to his work. Orch. My mother looked as though she had been slapped in public. We didn't know. Because you never bothered to ask, Patricia said sharply. You saw a librarian and automatically assumed she was poor and a failure. She gestured toward the room. Half the people in this room have contributed to initiatives funded by Theo. We all know his work and his reputation. Orch. A senator stood up from table 2 and walked over. Ashford, good to see you, he said, shaking Theo's hand. My team has the draft ready for that educational reform bill we discussed last month. Will you take a look at it? Catching the tense atmosphere, the senator added, Am I interrupting something? Just a family matter, Theo said quietly. Orch. The senator looked at my parents, realization dawning on him. You're Preston from Corbett Capital, right? We met at a fundraiser. Preston gave a weak nod. Interesting, the senator's tone cooled instantly. I take it, you didn't realize Theo was family. We are just finding out, Preston said lamely. I watched the social hierarchy shift in real time. Orch. Investors from table 4 stood up and approached, not just to greet us as a couple, but specifically to reach Theo. Suddenly, he was the person worth knowing and connecting with. My mother's carefully curated social ladder completely collapsed. Orch. The important figures she had placed near the stage, the ones she plied with champagne and orchids to keep close to power, were abandoning her head table to gather around table 18, the overflow table in the corner meant for unimportance. It had become the absolute center of the room. Orch. Gabrielle tried to squeeze through the crowd, raising her camera once more in the delusion that she could still extract content from the disaster. Patricia Morrison stepped right into her path. Put the camera away. I'm just documenting. Put it away, Patricia said, her voice like steel. You've done quite enough. Gabrielle lowered her camera and slunk back to the edge of the stage. I watched her shrink. Without her phone and her performance, she was just a 26-year-old who had weaponized her privilege, only to discover that actions have consequences. My father cleared his throat, trying to force a smile as he attempted to slip his social mask back on. Theo, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding here. That letter, it was just... We didn't have all the information. You had all the information you needed, Theo said softly, his voice carrying quiet devastation. You had 7 years of watching Catherine choose purpose over profit. You had 3 years of seeing how happy she was in a marriage you dismissed as beneath her. And you had tonight watching her show up even when she knew how you'd treat her. That was more than enough information. Preston turned pale. The issue isn't how much you know about me, Theo continued. It's why neither of you ever cared to know her. A dead silence settled over the room. Jeffrey Hunter let out a short, sharp breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Checkmate! My mother tried next, her tone softening, sounding entirely calculated. Catherine, sweetheart! Maybe we can talk about this in private. This is all just too... No. My own voice surprised me. It was loud. Clear, final. You turn this into a public execution, so let it stay public. Caroline's mask cracked, if only for a second. I caught a glimpse of the panic underneath, real fear. She was losing control of the narrative, losing control of the entire room, and she knew it. Angela Rivera stepped towards the stage, picked up the microphone my father had dropped, and tapped it twice. The sound echoed through the hall. May I have everyone's attention, please? The room fell quiet, every eye locked on the front. I apologize for the unexpected interruption to tonight's event, she said, offering a warm, professional, totally in control smile. Given the circumstances, I believe now is the perfect time to make an announcement that was originally scheduled for tomorrow. She paused, letting this anticipation build in the room. As Queensborough president, one of my highest priorities has always been educational equity, making sure every child, regardless of their zip code or family income, has access to quality learning resources. Her voice carried real conviction. Libraries are the bedrock of that access. They're democracy in action. Low murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. That is why I am deeply honored to announce that the Queen's Public Library System will be receiving the largest single private donation in its history. She let the words sink in. $50 million. A collective gasp swept through the room, a genuine gasp, even in a hall packed with Wall Street veterans used to hearing massive numbers. Funding from the Ashford Literacy Foundation will be distributed over 5 years to build 3 new library branches in our most underserved communities: Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst. It will establish digital literacy labs, expand ESL programs, and train 200 teachers. Angela's eyes moved across the room, landing right on me. At the same time, it will create a new position: Director of Community Engagement. This person will oversee all outreach projects, ensure the funds reach the neighborhoods that need them most, and serve as the bridge between the library system and the people it serves. Another pause. Catherine Corbett has been offered this position, and she has accepted. Angela continued. Some of you might not be familiar with Catherine's work. Allow me to tell you. She pulled out actual notes, real ones she'd prepared in advance. For 7 years, Catherine has worked at the Flushing branch of the Queen's Public Library. She teaches free ESL classes twice a week, serving over 200 immigrant families every year. She created a literacy program that boosted reading comprehension scores among adult learners by 43%. Data, facts, real proof. Her students come from 18 different countries, many of them clean houses, drive cabs, or work night shifts, Yet they still show up to her classes because they know education is their path forward. Catherine doesn't just teach them English. She shows them how to advocate for themselves and navigate systems that were often designed to leave them behind. Tears welling up in my eyes, I fought with everything I had to keep them back. Last year, one of her students, Maria Rodriguez from Honduras, went from working as a cleaner to an administrative assistant after learning workplace English in Catherine's class. Maria's daughter can now stay in school instead of taking weekend jobs. Angela looked right at my mother. That's impact. That's real value. That is the work Catherine chose to do. Theo recognized that, and he built a $50 million initiative around her dedication. Applause started up. A bit hesitant at first, just scattered claps, but quickly building momentum. It wasn't polite applause. It was genuine, heartfelt appreciation. My mother stood frozen, her face completely drained of color. The champagne glass she had raised earlier for a toast sat abandoned on table 1. Angela wasn't done yet. The director position carries an annual salary of $95,000, complete with comprehensive health benefits and a professional development budget. Furthermore, Catherine will have direct oversight over how the $50 million is allocated. $95,000. Almost double my current salary. While nowhere near Corvette capital money or private equity wealth, it was money I earned through meaningful work. Groundbreaking for the first new branch will take place in 3 months in Jackson Heights, a neighborhood where 45,000 residents currently rely on a single aging library. Angela smiled. Catherine chose the location herself, knowing better than anyone which communities need it most. The applause grew louder. Jeffrey Hunter stood up, clapping even harder. Others quickly followed his lead, and a standing ovation began to spread through the hall. Over at table 18, Jennifer Martin, the analyst sitting with me, jumped to her feet, clapping wildly with a huge grin on her face. Hell yes. Table 17 stood up. Then table 16. The wave swept from the back to the front, moving away from the stage. Tables 1 through 8, the VIP section, stayed seated, my family included. They couldn't stand, couldn't clap, because doing so would mean admitting they were completely wrong. Angela raised a hand, and the applause gradually settled. I want to make one thing clear, she said, her tone turning serious. This grant was finalized 3 weeks ago. The official announcement was meant to take place tomorrow at Queensborough Hall. Just a small, low-key press conference. 3 weeks ago. Before the invitations went out. Before the seating chart was arranged. Before the letter disowning me was drafted. Theo insisted we wait until after tonight, Angela said, looking over at him. He told me, I want Catherine to accept this role for the right reasons, not because she's running away from something, but because she's running toward something. I looked at Theo. He met my gaze with quiet calm. He had known for 3 weeks. He knew about the grant, the position, all of it. Yet, he said nothing because he wanted me to face my family one last time and make my own choice freely. Theo didn't even need to be here tonight. Angela kept going. He knew how you would treat him, how you would treat Catherine. But he came anyway, simply to support his wife. Lowering the mic, she walked off the stage and came right up to me. Catherine, the job is yours, starting September 1st, if you'll have it. Speechless, I could only nod. Angela pulled me into a hug, whispering in my ear, You earned this. Don't let anyone ever make you feel otherwise. The hall erupted into loud chatter. No more hushed whispering. People were talking openly, recalculating their social standing in real time. Snippets drifted my way. Table 6. Did you see her mother's face? She had no clue. Table 9. Donating $50 million to libraries? Honestly, that's incredible. Table 14. They disowned her at table 18 while her husband is sitting on $3 billion. You couldn't write a script like this. Preston stood by the edge of the stage, completely frozen. Caroline stood beside him, picking up her champagne glass again, her hand trembling violently. Gabrielle was gone. Scanning the room, I spotted her near the exit, staring frantically at her phone, swiping and deleting videos. Too late. Screenshots were already circulating. Someone at table 7 called out. Her Instagram story, the one where she mocked them for taking the subway. It went viral. 20,000 shares in 15 minutes. Gabrielle's face completely fell. She turned and sprinted toward the restroom in her designer gown, leaving her camera sitting abandoned on a chair. A man at table 2 stood up. In his 60s, wearing a sharp suit, he was a face I recognized from financial news. He walked right up to Preston. "We need to talk. In private." Preston gave a blank nod, and they stepped off to the side. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I watched Preston's face go from pale to completely ashen. 2 minutes later, the man walked straight out the door. No goodbyes, just left. Right after that, another investor from table 4 walked out. Then someone from table 5. By 8:20, 7 people had walked out early. All of them investors or business partners, making a clear statement with their departure. Jennifer Martin leaned in close. "That guy from table 2 is their biggest investor. Brought them $200 million in capital last year." She whistled softly. "Your family just lost him. How do you know that?" "Body language." Plus, he looked completely disgusted. The room had fractured into distinct groups. Tables 1 through 8. Family members and close business partners huddling together, defensive, desperately trying to manage the fallout. Tables 9 through 17. Business associates forming their own circle, talking quietly and shooting glances at my parents, clearly making up their minds. And everyone else was gravitating toward table 18, toward us. People approached Theo, asking about the Ashford Foundation, the Queen's Project, and the literacy programs. I stood beside him, taking it all in silently. Patricia Morrison handed me a glass of water. "Are you holding up okay? I honestly don't know." "You'll be just fine," she said, giving my shoulder a squeeze. "You're free now, whether you realize it yet or not." Over at table 3, Angela was checking her phone openly, likely texting her PR director and news teams. By tomorrow morning, this story would be everywhere. At table 1, my mother locked eyes with me across the crowd, staring intensely. Her face was a storm of emotions, embarrassment, anger, fear, calculation, all battling for control. I stared right back, refusing to look away first. She was the one who finally broke eye contact. A woman walked over from table 11. Dressed in an elegant designer gown with a pearl necklace, she radiated that timeless style my mother always tried so hard to project. She walked past my parents' table without giving them a second glance, coming straight to me. "Catherine, I'm Eleanor Hartford. I serve on the board of the Public Library Foundation." She shook my hand with a firm grip. "Theo mentioned your ESL program to me. I would love to explore ways we might collaborate." Of course. Eleanor shot a glance toward my mother, then turned back to me, her voice just loud enough for people nearby to hear. "You know, true grace isn't about money. It's about what you choose to do with it. Your husband understands that, and clearly so do you." She turned and walked away, leaving her message lingering in the air. My mother heard it. Everyone at table 1 heard it. It was the same subtle, biting cruelty she had used on me for years, now turned right back on her, completely exposed. I expected to feel a rush of satisfaction or victory, but all I felt was exhausted. At 8:25, the room was still buzzing, conversations overlapping as phone screens lit up everywhere. The event had spun completely away from its original purpose. I turned to Theo. "I need to say something. You don't owe them a single word." "I know. This is for me." I walked toward the stage, stepping up those same 3 stairs I had climbed 40 minutes ago to receive that letter. Picking up the microphone, I got used to its weight. I'd used mics at library events and community meetings plenty of times. This was just another speech, except this time, everything was different. I tapped the mic, and the sound echoed softly through the hall. The room fell quiet. 155 people turned to face me, including my family. I looked at my parents, then at Gabrielle, who had just stepped out of the restroom with her makeup smudged, standing near the back. For 7 years, you've told me I was wasting my potential. My voice was steady, calm, free of anger, just stating facts. You told me I ruined my future, that I chose failure over success, that I was an embarrassment to this family. Orch. A heavy silence settled over the room, so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Tonight, you put all of that into an official document, a notarized legal notice. You disowned me in front of your investors, your peers, and everyone who matters in your world. Preston tried to step in. Catherine, I'm not finished. He stopped talking. Orch. I want you to know that I'm actually grateful, I said, pausing to let it land. I'm grateful you finally made your stance clear. I spent 7 years hoping you would see the value in what I do. Hoping you would understand that teaching Mrs. Chen to read so she can help her grandson with his homework actually matters. Orch. That helping Maria Rodriguez learn English so she can support her daughter actually matters. In my mind, I saw the notes from Mrs. Chen, Mr. Park, Maria's emails, and all 47 thank you messages I had saved from students whose lives were changed. I kept hoping you would understand, but I was wrong. Orch. You'll never see the value in it because you measure everything in dollars, and my work doesn't generate profit. It empowers people. Looking around the room, I caught the eyes of Angela, Jeffrey, Patricia, and everyone who had stepped up to support work that truly mattered. I won't waste another second hoping you'll see my worth. The families I serve see it. My husband sees it. Orch. And it seems everyone else in this room sees it too. I turned my attention back to my parents. The disowning letter is official. I accept it. I won't contest it or fight it. Consider it my gift to you. From this moment on, you're entirely free. You never have to feel embarrassed about having a daughter who chose books over billions again. Orch. My mother's expression completely collapsed, her real emotions finally breaking through her defense. Too late. Let me make one thing crystal clear. My voice turned firm. You are no longer a part of my life. Do not visit my new office. Do not come to my new library branches. Do not show up at any events I organize. You made me a stranger to you. Now, I'm making it permanent. Orch. Preston took a step forward. Catherine, can we please talk? No, we can't. I put the microphone down, the soft thud sounding like a final closing door. I stepped off the stage, walking right past my parents without a glance, past Gabrielle, who was openly crying, and past table 1 with its abandoned champagne and fading orchids. I walked straight up to Theo. Let's go. Orch. He took my hand and we moved toward the exit. It started at table 18. Jennifer Martin stood up and began to clap, slow and steady. Table 17 joined in, then 16, then 14. By the time we reached the banquet hall doors, 40 people were standing and clapping for us. Not for the drama, but for something genuine. Orch. Angela Rivera, Jeffrey Hunter, Patricia Morrison, Eleanor Hartford joined in. Even the investors, who had stepped out earlier, stayed in the lobby, joining the applause. Some of my parents' business partners at table 6 and 7 stood up too, picking a side and choosing the right one. Tables 1 through 5 stayed seated, my family and their closest circle frozen in place. Orch. We walked through the doors into the main lobby, the applause fading behind us. The warm summer night air hit us like a wall, hot, humid, and real. Theo hailed a cab, and we slid into the back seat. I gave the driver our home address. As the cab pulled away, I saw my mother run out of the building in her heels, calling my name. I didn't look back. Orch. By the time we got home, my phone had 47 missed calls. 12 from Caroline, 8 from Preston, 15 from Gabrielle, 6 from unknown numbers, likely family lawyers or relatives trying to manage the crisis, and 6 from reporters. News travels fast. Text messages kept pouring in, stacking up on my lock screen. Caroline. Catherine, please call me back. We need to talk. Orch. Caroline, this is ridiculous. You're being childish. Caroline, your father is deeply upset. Give him a call. Preston. Let's handle this like adults and talk. Gabrielle. Oh my God, Katie, I'm so sorry. Please, please, please answer. Gabrielle. I had no idea, I swear. Gabrielle, everyone online is attacking me. Please make it stop. Porch. I turned my phone face down on the kitchen counter, without replying or blocking them yet. I wanted to see just how desperate they would get. Theo made tea, chamomile, the kind he always made when I was stressed, and placed a mug in front of me. How are you doing? Ask me tomorrow. A quiet, sad smile touched his face. Fair enough. Porch. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with an email from James Patterson, the family lawyer who had notarized the disowning letter. Subject: Urgent legal matter, immediate attention required. I opened it and read the first paragraph. Dear Miss Corbett, I am writing on behalf of Preston and Caroline Corbett regarding the document handed to you this evening. Porch. Upon further review, procedural irregularities have been identified that may render the notice invalid. The Corbett family requests a meeting to discuss amending or rescinding the document. I read it twice and actually laughed out loud. They wanted to take it all back. Showing the email to Theo, he shook his head after reading it. Of course they do. Porch. Procedural irregularities is just code for we didn't realize your husband was a billionaire. Do you want our lawyer to look at it? No need. I deleted the email. I'm keeping that document. It's the best gift they ever gave me. At 11:47, Caroline called again. I let it go to voicemail, waited a moment, then listened to it. Porch. Her voice was tight, barely keeping her emotions in check. Catherine, it's Mom. I know you're upset, but you have to understand. We were trying to protect the family legacy. We had no idea about Theo's actual situation. That changes everything. We should sit down as a family and talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Maybe we acted too quickly earlier. Please call me back tonight. I'm asking you. Porch. Protect the family legacy. Not we were wrong, not we're sorry. Just excuses. I saved the voicemail as evidence, then blocked her number, doing the same for Preston, Gabrielle, and the family lawyer. With every contact I blocked, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Are you sure about this? 100%. He pulled me into a hug. Porch. Standing in our tiny kitchen in our 480 square foot apartment, I felt richer than I ever did in that Upper East Side penthouse. At 11:58, Theo's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Morrison. You might want to check Gabrielle's Instagram comments. He handed me his phone, and I searched for Gabrielle's account. Porch. The video she shot of me at table 18 earlier, mocking me with, "Do you even know how much the venue fee costs?" had been screen recorded and reposted. It was going completely viral, sitting at 12,000 comments and counting. Porch. Top comment, 8,500 likes. Imagine mocking your sister for taking the subway when she spends her time helping immigrants learn to read, while your own family disowns her for lacking value. Second top comment, 6,200 likes. She made fun of her sister's commute while the sister's husband funds libraries across 40 states. Peak irony. Porch. Third top comment, 5,800 likes. This is what happens when arrogance meets cruelty. Catherine completely won. Gabrielle had deleted her account, but the damage was already done. Screenshots live forever. I closed the app, feeling no sense of triumph, just a quiet sadness. She was only 26. Porch. She could have made better choices and been kind, but she learned from the worst teachers possible. Our mother had taught her well. On Friday morning, August 26th, I woke up to 17 texts from friends, colleagues, and students, all sharing the same link to a New York Times Metro section article. Record $50 million gift to Queens Libraries amid family drama by Sarah Chen. Porch. I read it over coffee while Theo sat beside me, letting me take it in silently. The piece was objective and stuck to the facts, but the facts alone said everything. The Ashford Literacy Foundation, led by philanthropist Theo Ashford, announced a $50 million donation to the Queens Public Library system yesterday. Porch. The announcement came during a private event where Ashford's wife, Catherine Corbett Ashford, was publicly disowned by her family. Witnesses described the event as striking and deeply cold. Porch. Preston Corbett, founder of Corbett Capital Partners, presented his daughter with a notarized disowning notice at a dinner ostensibly organized to celebrate her birthday, unaware that his son-in-law manages a $3 billion educational endowment. The article quoted Angela Rivera's statement about the donation, included photos of me working with students at the library, and featured a statement from Theo's foundation. The final line made me pause. Representatives for Corbett Capital Partners declined to comment. Repeated calls to the Corbett family went unanswered. They were hiding out, going quiet, a classic crisis PR move. While the Times kept it professional, Page 6 was far less reserved. Socialite family's $3 billion blunder. Upper East Side family casts out daughter, unaware husband funds, half the nation's libraries. It was full of speculation, but the photos pulled from social media before Gabrielle deleted her account told the story clearly. Me at table 18 with cheap carnations and plain water glasses, contrasted against my parents at table 1 with champagne, orchids, and self-satisfied smiles. The stark contrast said it all. The comment sections were wild, with thousands of messages overwhelmingly taking my side, criticizing my parents, and a few suspecting a PR stunt. By Saturday, August 27th, the financial world began taking notice. 3 major investors pulled their capital from Corbett Capital Partners, totaling $180 million, citing a misalignment of values and concern for their own reputation. In other words, they didn't want to be associated with people who publicly humiliated their own daughter. Preston issued a statement through his firm's PR team. Corbett Capital Partners prioritizes family and integrity above all. Recent events have been severely misrepresented in the media. We remain committed to our investors and our core mission. Empty, defensive buzzwords. The Wall Street Journal ran a small piece. Private equity firm loses investors following family drama. It wasn't front-page news, but tucked in the business section, it was clear and damaging enough. The messages that truly mattered to me came from a different place. Mrs. Chen sent an email Saturday morning. Miss Catherine, I see news. You are hero I always know. You teach me red. Now whole city knows you matter. So proud of you. Love, Mrs. Chen. Attached was a photo of Mrs. Chen, her husband, and their grandkids, all holding up library cards and smiling at the camera inside my library. I printed it out and placed it on my desk right next to Theo's photo. Maria Rodriguez left a voicemail. Miss Catherine, it's Maria. I saw the news and told my daughter. That's Miss Catherine, the woman who changed our lives. Now she's going to help even more people. We are so proud of you. Thank you for everything. I saved that message and replayed it 3 times. Mr. Park left a note at the library front desk. You taught me to use my voice. Now you're using yours. Proud of you, Mr. Park. Note number 48 added to my collection. That was what actually mattered, not the news articles or the social media noise, but the students whose lives were better because I showed up. That meant far more than any trust fund ever could. A week later, on Saturday, August 31st at 9:47 a.m., a text arrived from an unknown number. Catherine, it's Mom. Please don't delete this. I'm reaching out from a new number because you blocked me. We need to talk. Lunch at Le Bernardin today at 1 p.m. Just the 2 of us. No lawyers, no Preston, just mother and daughter. Please, Mom. For the first time in 7 years, she signed off as Mom instead of Mother. Interesting, I showed it to Theo. Are you going? No. Want me to text back for you? No, I'll handle it. I carefully typed out my response. I work on Saturdays. I have ESL classes from 10 to 2. My students can't afford to miss a single session. Sent 3 minutes later. Reply, Catherine, this is more important. You can reschedule your class. I gritted my teeth. She still didn't get it. She never would. I replied, my classes can't be rescheduled, and nothing you want to talk about is more important than my students. Then I blocked the number. Caroline tried calling from Preston's phone. I declined and blocked it. She tried using Gabrielle's phone, declined and blocked. Then came an email with the subject line, Business opportunity. Ashford Foundation Partnership. Orch. I read the first line. Catherine, I've been thinking about how Corbett Capital could collaborate with Theo's foundation. There's real synergy here. Maybe we could discuss it over lunch. I deleted it immediately without replying. All she wanted was access to Theo, his connections, his funds, and his influence. She still didn't care about me, only about what I could bring to the table. On Tuesday morning, September 6th, while helping a student search the online catalog, Denise walked up to my desk. Catherine, someone is here to see you. She says she's your mother. My stomach dropped. Tell her I'm assisting a student. Which was true. I did. She said she'll wait. I looked at the 18-year-old student from Bangladesh working hard to find study materials for his GED exam. Give me 5 minutes to get him set up, then I'll handle it. Taking my time, I made sure he had every resource he needed, walked him to the checkout desk, and then headed toward the lobby. Caroline was standing near the entrance in a Chanel suit and high heels, looking entirely out of place among families with strollers, students with backpacks, and neighborhood seniors reading newspapers on worn couches. Catherine, she said, forcing a warm smile. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I'm working. I see that, she said, glancing around at the peeling paint, aged carpet, and older computers, unable to hide her condescension. This is where you work. This is where I help people. Of course, I didn't mean. She paused, trying to reframe her words. I wanted to talk about the announcement, the grant. $50 million is incredible, Catherine, really. I was thinking Corbett Capital has extensive experience managing funds and allocation strategies. We could help. There it was. No, Caroline. What? The answer is no. To lunch, to collaborating, to phone calls, and to showing up at my workplace, I said quietly, keeping my tone professional. You had 7 years to see the value in what I do, and you chose to ignore it. That door is closed. I'm your mother. You disowned me publicly with a notarized document. When you chose to humiliate me instead of showing care, you gave up that title. Her composure completely broke. I made a mistake. Can't you see that? I see someone who made a calculated decision that backfired on them. That isn't remorse. Turning around, I walked back to my desks and picked up where I left off. She didn't follow me. 3 weeks after the dinner, on September 15th at 10 a.m., a press conference was held at Queensborough Hall to officially announce the Ashford Literacy Foundation grant. 85 community members attended, including my ESL students, parents, teachers, local business owners, and people who rely on and love the library. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row with Maria Rodriguez beside her, while Mr. Park stood near the back since every seat was filled. Angela Rivera spoke first, warm and articulate, laying out the timeline, details, and expected impact of the grant. Then she introduced me. Catherine Corbett Ashford has served at the Queen's Public Library for 7 years, teaching ESL to over 400 students and building literacy programs that changed countless lives. Now, she will oversee the largest library expansion in Queen's history. I stepped up to the podium, looking out at the crowd of familiar faces, the people I had supported, and those who had taught me so much. When I chose to become a librarian, I was told I was throwing away my potential, I said, without naming my family directly. There was no need to. I was told books couldn't change the world. I looked toward Mrs. Chen. But Mrs. Chen learned to read in English, and now she reads stories to her grandchildren. That changes the world. I turned toward Maria. Maria learned workplace English, earned a promotion, and supported her daughter's education. That changes the world. I looked back at Mr. Park. Mr. Park learned to read at 68, and he told me it gave him his voice back. That changes the world. I paused for a moment. This grant will build 3 new branches, train 200 teachers, and expand programs that genuinely work. But the real transformation comes from the people who walk through our doors every day, looking for an opportunity, a spark of hope, and someone who believes in them. That is what libraries do. We remind people that they matter, regardless of income, background, or education. Your dreams matter, and your potential matters. I am deeply honored to lead this effort. Thank you. Orch. The applause that followed was loud and sincere, coming from a place of true gratitude. September 19th marked my first official day as Director of Community Engagement. My new office on the third floor of the main Queens branch was modest, with a window overlooking the street, a desk, a computer, and a phone. Orch. The position paid $95,000 a year, and when my first paycheck hit my account, I stared at the number, nearly double what I used to make. It wasn't Corbett Capital money, but it was earned through my own hard work. Denise knocked and stepped in, dropping off a cup of coffee. How does it feel? Like a dream. You earned every bit of it, she said, setting the cup down. Orch. Every student you taught, every class you led, every extra hour you spent helping people fill out citizenship forms. This is just recognition for the work you've always done. Thank you, Denise. Orch. After she left, I sat in my new office, reviewing the task list from Angela's team, hiring coordinators for each new branch, expanding ESL offerings, setting up digital literacy labs, training teachers, and building local community partnerships. It was demanding, exciting, and completely rewarding. On October 3rd, we held the grand opening for the first new branch in Jackson Heights. Orch. 320 people attended, including families, kids, and longtime residents who had advocated for a neighborhood library for 15 years. I cut the red ribbon with oversized scissors while photographers snapped pictures. It felt a little surreal, but I couldn't stop smiling. Inside, shelves were already stocked, computers were set up, and ESL classrooms were ready to go. Orch. Everything we promised had come to life. An 8-year-old girl with dark hair tied in pigtails walked up to me with a shy smile. Miss Catherine? I knelt down. Yes, that's me. I'm Elena. Mrs. Chen is my grandmother. I know, Elena. Your grandmother talks about you all the time. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I drew this for you. Orch. Unfolding it, I saw a crayon drawing of a family with a woman labeled Miss Catherine in the center, surrounded by figures of different colors labeled Grandmother, Mom, Mr. Park, Maria, and me. At the bottom, written in neat child's handwriting, it read, Miss Catherine, our family's angel. A lump formed in my throat. Alina, this is beautiful. Grandmother says your family. Orch. She said, even if we're not related by blood, you care for us like family. I pulled her into a tight hug. Your grandmother is completely right. She ran back to her mother, and I carefully folded the drawing, placing it in my bag. That evening, I set it on my desk at home right next to Theo's picture, and the first thank you note Mrs. Chen had ever written me. It hit me then. I had a family. Orch. It just wasn't the one I was born into, and that was entirely okay. On November 24th, we hosted Thanksgiving in our Brooklyn apartment. 12 guests joined us. Mrs. Chen and her family, Maria and her daughter, Mr. Park and his son, along with 3 other students from my ESL class. Orch. 15 of us squeezed into a 480-square-foot space, sharing laughs, food, and conversation across 3 languages. Mrs. Chen brought dumplings, Maria brought tamales, and Mr. Park's son brought short ribs. It was a potluck Thanksgiving and beautiful chaos. This beats Thanksgiving in the Hamptons, doesn't it? Theo whispered to me. I smiled. By a mile. Orch. There were no formal seating charts or social hierarchies, just people who cared about one another, sharing food, stories, and gratitude. Maria's daughter asked for advice on her college applications, so I helped her draft an outline right there at the small kitchen table, balancing my laptop on my knees, while the turkey went cold. This was what home really felt like. Orch. By February 15th, all 3 new library branches were fully operational. Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst were now serving 62,000 residents who previously had little access to library resources. All 3 locations offered ESL classes, digital literacy labs, after-school tutoring, and community gathering spaces. Orch. During a visit to the Corona branch, I watched a young mother show her daughter how to search the online catalog. An older man check out his first book in English, and teenagers studying together. It was real, tangible impact. The funds were doing exactly what they were meant to do. 6 months had passed, and not a single message from my family had reached me. I had blocked every number, email address, and avenue of contact. Through professional channels, I heard Corbett Capital was facing serious trouble. 2 more investors had pulled out. Revenue was down 18%, and Preston was considering an early retirement. Gabrielle had moved to Los Angeles to try rebuilding her social media presence, but it flopped. The video where she mocked me was still circulating online, completely damaging her online image. Caroline once sent flowers to the library, which I promptly donated to a local senior center. I took no joy in their struggles and felt no need for revenge. I simply felt free. The disowning document still rested in my drawer. Occasionally, I would take it out and look at it, feeling no bitterness or anger, only gratitude. It had given me permission to stop trying, stop hoping, and stop waiting for their approval. A document meant to hurt me had ultimately set me free. Closing the drawer, I couldn't help but smile. "What are you thinking about?" Theo asked, walking into our cozy bedroom. "Family, my parents." "Not your real family? My real family is made of the people who show up, who see you, and who value what you value." He kissed my forehead. "Like who?" "Like Mrs. Chen, Maria, Mr. Park, Elena, Denise, Angela, and you. Me? Especially you. You saw me when they refused to." He pulled me close. "I saw who you always were, they just never bothered to look." We stood together in our small apartment, the sounds of Brooklyn traffic drifting through the window, while the radiators clanked softly in the background. It was perfectly chaotic. I used to think family was about bloodlines, trust funds, Upper East Side penthouses, and knowing which fork to use at fine restaurants. Now I knew better. Family was found in the thank you notes from my students, the colleagues who celebrated my success, and the husband who chose me every single day, not for my last name or connections, but for my work, my values, and simply for who I was. That letter remains in my drawer, and it likely always will. Not as a painful memory, but as a reminder. Sometimes the greatest gift you can receive is being released from people who never valued you in the first place. And most of the time, that freedom is the only way you ever find the place where you truly belong.